Hello
everyone.
Hello.
My name is Lisa Grab. I'm from SDS, which is Students for a Democratic Society. And tonight's a very exciting night. We have our guest speaker here, Ayers. First I want to talk a little bit about what SDS is all about, and then I'm going to introduce Bill and get this going. SDS is an activist organization, but we also work to raise awareness. We believe that education and activism go together really well, and they both need one another. Also, SDS does support controversy. We are very happy that people from all different political perspectives are here tonight, and we're very excited to hear what different sort of opinions we have, and try to reach some sort of understanding between all of the groups here. And finally, we believe change is possible and necessary throughout the entire world. We want equality and social justice for all. And now I'm going to talk about Bill a little bit. I'm going to take this from an introduction about him from his book Fugitive Days, which is on sale for $10. William Ayers is a distinguished professor of education and senior university scholar at University of Illinois at Chicago, and founder of both the Small Schools Workshop and the Center for Youth and Society. A graduate of University of Michigan, the Bank Street College of Education, and Teachers College, Columbia University, he writes about social justice, democracy, and education with cultural context of schooling and teaching as an essentially intellectual, ethical, and political enterprise. So, here's Bill Ayers.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I thought I was going to start at 8 o'clock. It's now 8:45. I don't know what all that is about. But I assure you that neither I nor Students for Democratic Society thought we needed all this security, and I still don't. So, good position. Can you hear me okay? No. That's no? No. Dang, I'll try to talk into the mic then. You can hear me now? Yeah? They're sending a technician down, but, you know, I went to the men's room at 5 to 8 thinking I was starting at 8, so I may have to excuse myself. How many of you are teachers or planning to be teachers? How many? All right, cool. So that's who I guess I'm going to mainly aim my remarks at. And I'm going to talk for about 25 minutes, and then I'd really like to get a conversation going. So I assume that people here are not shy and will ask questions and we can have a dialogue. This room doesn't lend itself beautifully to dialogue, but nonetheless we should try to have one. You know, being a lifelong teacher myself, I really do believe that the basic pedagogical gesture is a gesture where one learns at the same time as one teaches. That it's not simply what one says, but what one hears. And I'm a huge believer in dialogue in teaching. And that's why I want to encourage you, whatever predispositions you come with or whatever you hear tonight, the challenge to speak up, and I will listen with the possibility of being heard, and I'll also, speak with the possibility of being heard and listen with the possibility of being changed. The job for all of you who are teachers or becoming teachers, the most important thing is to become a great teacher. And becoming a great teacher is hard work. The sense that people have that teaching is easy, people outside the profession, and that teaching is somehow, short hours and short years, and is an absolute myth. Teaching, as I've known it, and as most of you who study and experience it, is, long hours and low pay, and the amount of planning and work that goes into it is huge. But I think it's hugely important to underline a couple of things. One is the relationship between teaching and democracy. And that's where I want to begin. It's very clear that every social system, every imaginable social system has an educational system that goes with it. And the educational system in many ways mirrors and is a window into the social system. But if you think about it, schools in places as wildly diverse as apartheid South Africa, medieval Saudi Arabia, Soviet Russia, fascist Italy, all of these school systems wanted their kids to stay away from drugs and alcohol. All of them wanted their kids to show up on time, do their homework, and learn their subject matter. All of them wanted their kids to become good citizens in their society. So what makes we want that too, incidentally, but what makes education in a democracy different? What is the one or two things that make education in a democracy different than education in an authoritarian or autocratic system? And I would argue that the basic difference comes down to this, that in a democracy we take as an article of faith that all human beings are of incalculable value. Every human being is valuable. We also take it as an article of faith in a democracy that the fullest development of all is the condition for the fullest development of each. And conversely, the fullest development of each is the condition for the full development of all. That means that has huge implications for policy, but it also has implications for curriculum and teaching. And I'm saying this pointedly to teachers because even though there's work to do on the policy front and the legislature and administration, if you have in your heart as a teacher these fundamental values, I think that you can make a difference in your classroom today, tomorrow, the next day, regardless of whether the state legislature gets it right or the administration gets it right. So what are the implications of this notion of every child, every human being, including every child, is of incalculable value? Well, the policy implications include that we can't tolerate in a democracy a school system in which some kids go to school and go to schools where the basic situation is that the system spends $40,000 per kid per year to educate them. And other kids, just 4 or 5 miles down the road, go to schools that spend $5,000 per kid per year to educate them. That makes a huge difference in terms of the outcomes that those kids are likely to have. It makes a huge difference. And we should be intolerant of that kind of disparity. That's a disparity that's obvious everywhere you go in this country. It's obvious in Chicago, it's obvious in New Jersey, it's obvious in New York City, it's obvious in Los Angeles. If this is what Jonathan Kozol 15, 20 years ago called savage inequalities. Savage inequalities in education are intolerable in a democracy if we take seriously the notion that all human beings are of incalculable value. What we're saying to kids, if we say in Chicago, for example, that some kids go to school, get $40,000 per year, and some at $5,000, what we're saying to kids is that our basic policy towards children is choose the right parents. If you choose the right parents, you'll do fine. But choose the wrong parents, I'm just sorry, you're on your own. That is not a reasonable kind of policy in a democracy. And you know, another way of saying the same thing is in a democracy, whatever the wisest and most privileged parents want for their children, we as a community should want for all of our children. So, and that seems to me just basic, simple fairness. So you remember when the president moved, the new president moved from Chicago to Washington, there was great speculation about where he would send his kids. Well, in Chicago, his kids went to the University of Chicago Laboratory School. What did they find at the University of Chicago Laboratory School? They found small classes capped at 15. They found a teaching corps that was not only well-respected, but unionized. They found a curriculum based, at least in part, on following their own interests and asking their own questions of the world and pursuing those questions. They found well-resourced classrooms. So when they went to D.C., what do you think happened? There's great speculation. Where will they go to school? Well, they landed at Sidwell Friends, where they found classes that were small, capped at 15, a teacher corps that was well respected, widely, highly resourced classrooms, and so on. So if that's good enough for the children of the President of the United States, shouldn't that be our baseline for saying this is what we want for all of our kids? Not that we could achieve it tomorrow, but isn't it a reasonable aspiration? Incidentally, Arnie Duncan, the superintendent of Chicago schools, but now the Secretary of Education, went to the lab schools for 12 years. So this is the education they got. And yet, on the west side of Chicago, second grades are as big as 35 kids per classroom. Does that make a difference in terms of education? It absolutely makes a difference. So on the policy level, we should be fighting for the idea that if all human beings and all children are of incalculable value, we should have a standard that says everybody should be trying to achieve this: small classes, well-resourced classrooms, a curriculum based in part on pursuing questions, a teacher corps that's respected and unionized, teachers who are well-paid, well-rested. These are not unreasonable things to expect, and these are things that we should talk about. But then on the question of curriculum, too, the basic assumption of a democracy asks something specific of curriculum. Because in the other social systems that I mentioned, in medieval Saudi Arabia and apartheid South Africa and so on, those curricula, whatever else they taught obedience and conformity. Whatever else they taught obedience and conformity. So along with your literature, your music, your math, you got a big dose of just stay quiet, keep your head down, go along, and conform. In a democracy, at least aspirationally, at least theoretically, we would want, along with everything else we teach, we would want to say that our kids are learning imagination, curiosity, courage, initiative. These are the kinds of qualities that we would want our kids to graduate with. Why? Because in a democracy, we are the sovereign. We, the people, are the sovereign. We have to make the decisions that affect our lives. The fact that that's imperfect and it doesn't happen in the way that it ought to is worth a lot of discussion. But nevertheless, again, theoretically, in a democracy, we would say the values of initiative and courage and imagination are much, much more powerful and important than the values of obedience and conformity. So, to me, this means that you as teachers and all of us as concerned citizens ought to be thinking about a couple of things that ought to be